Welcome to Realty Glimpse, your glimpse into realty, where I deliver to you valuable information that can have a positive impact on your very next real estate transaction. So today we're going to be talking about engineering, and I'm at SBA Engineering here in Grand Prairie, and I'm with Ryan Conrad. And Ryan, if you don't mind, can you tell us about SBA Engineering and what it does and what you do for SBA?
Sure. So SPA Engineering, or Shunik Popek and Associates Engineering, we are a multidisciplinary engineering firm. Currently, we provide structural, mechanical, and electrical engineering services to all of Alberta. We kind of have a focus of currently we focus in northern Alberta and Grand Prairie area, but we definitely do work down in the Edmonton and Calgary areas as well. I myself, I'm a certified engineering technologist, and I do project lead, so I take projects from engaging with the client to all the way through construction and construction documentation to the final product.
Okay, and you mentioned, so say I have a client and they're looking to either renovate their commercial building or they're going to be, starting right from scratch. You mentioned the engineers that are likely to be involved in that. I think you mentioned structural, electrical, mechanical. There's other disciplines that kind of that are on the fringe of that really work close with that. Can you tell us what those are? Do you offer those services and maybe explain maybe a little bit about those as well?
Sure. So currently we only offer structural, mechanical, and electrical, but there can be other, depending on the scope of the project, there can be civil engineers involved, geotechnical engineers involved, as well as there's a lot of other kind of specialty engineering disciplines like fire protection, or that's sprinklers, or acoustical engineering, or lighting engineering, and the list kind of goes on and on depending on how specific you want to get.
Okay, and now you mentioned maybe some of the deliverables, and some of that was like one of the clients where we met actually. Wasn't the first time, but we met actually by chance 2 times with 2 different clients. They were using both you and me, but one of them was a Group A Division 2. And so that has maybe something to do with, you talked about sprinklers, with what the deliverables will be that you're going to provide. Is that right? And then, if you don't mind talking to that, but also how municipalities might actually factor in, or other governing bodies maybe.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So there's again, like, almost countless regulatory bodies depending on what type of occupancy you are. Like you've mentioned, the Group A, that's one type of occupancy within the building code. And so there's Group A, Group B, Group C, D, E, and then there's also divisions of those for some of those as well. And each of those is a different type of building type of occupancy. And so depending on what that is and where it is, like you mentioned, the municipality, you can have different regulations that those different occupancies have to abide by. So for example, daycare might have different regulations that not only it has to fit into the building code, but also Alberta Health Services here in Alberta. Right. They'll have requirements for a building type of like a daycare. Different municipalities will have different bylaws that will require, that usually will mandate. Sometimes they'll restrict your building height or building size, and then again, depending on if you're, say, close to an airport, then there's airport regulations you also have to abide by. So there's many different regulations and codes that have to be considered with kind of every building.
Okay, and now on that design front, so like I'll see this, sometimes I'll see where it says it includes engineering, design, and drafting. What's the difference between design and drafting? And maybe while you're at it, I mean, you'll hear interior designer, you'll hear architect. Mm-hmm. These are all different. How do those fit into the final package? Maybe when it comes to either renovating or
Sure.
starting from scratch.
Sure. Yeah. So when you hear like design and drafting, one is kind of the consideration of a project, where it's the scope and maybe the different hurdles that you might have to consider when you're building a program and a functional layout for a space. And so that's all kind of the thought process that goes into it. And then the drafting side of it is kind of visualizing that, right? Where you kind of put it onto paper, and then that's where you see your construction drawings or your conceptual renderings or things of that nature, right? And so that's kind of the design and drafting pieces really generally broken out. And then so there can be a number of other professionals involved in that, specifically, architects, interior designers. They'll definitely be involved in the design portion of it for sure. And then they may have technologists. So we talked about technologists, which I'm a technologist, regulated under ASSET, which is a body in Alberta. They will oftentimes facilitate the design and drafting work of the professional architects and interior designers, as well as engineers.
Okay, so if I say I have a client and they're looking to renovate this place, and maybe it's quite intensive, who are they going to talk with first? Are they going to go see, would it be an architect, or would it be a designer, or would it be coming to you, as the engineer? Who would they go see first, do you think?
Sure. I think most people would think typically that you would go to see an architect first, I think, because they will help you come up with a general program and scope, and it's like kind of the first steps to get the idea across. And a lot of times it is useful to go to the architect first so you can get those first steps onto paper, so then you can then take that to your other design professionals and engineers to say, hey, this is what we want to do. What are there things that we need to consider moving forward in this design now?
Right.
Things of that nature. That being said, you can kind of engage with any of those registered professionals, and a registered professional in terms of buildings in Alberta is any architect, interior designer, or professional engineer. And if you go to those people, and they'll be able to tell you what the other disciplines you're probably going to need to continue on with your construction or development.
Yeah, so then you must work very tightly. So say if somebody comes and sees you, for example, and they say, hey, we're looking to build this place, then you must work very tightly maybe with architects, for example.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. We coordinate. I personally like to get all those people on board right away as soon as we can, because you maybe don't one discipline or the other. There's crossover in all of them for sure, but no one is specialized in the other's discipline. So it's always good to have their perspective on a project early on, just to kind of mitigate any unforeseen or maybe you don't see the big picture without the full team, I guess.
Right. Okay. And then how about, so now the builder, so some people will approach the builder first, but maybe there's a right way and a wrong way, or maybe there's pros and cons to both. I mean,
sure.
Would you ever talk with the builder first, or what order might they fall in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we see it both ways. Probably 50% of the time we have clients coming to the design professionals first, and then the other half, a lot of times we'll have a builder who's been engaged by a client, and they'll come, and then the builder will come to us to help them plan the project with the client, right? So there's pros and cons to each. I think if you engage a builder first, you probably have a good relationship with that builder. And a lot of times in construction, in any project, coordination and communication is a really key part of the project. So if you have a good relationship with that builder, then maybe it makes sense to go with them.
Right.
Maybe the negative part of that is you're kind of locking into their price then, right? So if you engage a designer first, an engineer, an architect, and we go through the process of designing and coming up with a package of deliverables for pricing or for construction, then you can kind of shop that around and get a competitive price from other contractors. And so it kind of depends on the client and how comfortable they are with the pricing that's on the market at the time.
Okay, that makes sense. So then what about say there's the permitting part? So we're talking about you're working with the municipality, and maybe that's going to even dictate maybe some of the deliverables that you're going to be providing potentially. And then so are you going to help them with the permitting, the contractor procurement, the contract administration, all that stuff?
Yeah, so definitely for sure, obviously the first step with permitting and really kind of by law for building permits, the authority having jurisdiction wants to see a minimum number of kind of plans and details of the scope of a project sealed by, depending on the size, sealed by a professional architect or engineer or interior designer. And so by law, some of that permitting stuff does need to come through a professional. In terms of, the second point.
So you have the contract
procurement. So a lot of times clients will engage us to help them out with that, because we have knowledge of current market pricing, you know, and we can help them determine which contract pricing kind of looks good. If a contractor is maybe missing a piece of information that
Right.
we can see in their pricing,
Yeah.
and you know, help the client through that kind of process. And then when it comes to contract administration, for sure, like will help facilitate, you know, your standard CCDC type of contracts. But then beyond that as well, again in the code, depending on the size of the project, there are a requirement for the professionals to have what they're called schedules. And that basically tells the authority having jurisdiction that you've retained a professional and they've done their due diligence to make sure that what they've designed was constructed on site, and that they've also done their reviews on site and they say, yeah, everything looks good and it's to code. And then, so that's a big part of the contract administration for us.
Yeah, so as far as the code, I mean, there's definitely that familiarity with the code, but then even on the municipality end of it, you know, to understand what's going on there. So say here we're in Grand Prairie, you said you've done work in other places as well. It's really to wrap you're wrapping your head around a lot of this stuff. And then you're maybe putting in schedules, and you're saying, we've looked at this, this is the minimum requirement here.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like when you start at the very beginning of the development permit stage, they have a whole host of other local kind of requirements in the bylaw that we kind of have knowledge of those items as well.
Okay, so now maybe there's a customer and they really want to save money and they're saying, let's just scratch the whole engineer, the architect, and I bet you might know a story or two of maybe when something has gone wrong for that strategy.
Yeah, and you know, obviously they're coming to us after, for sure. They're coming to us after the fact, and I won't get specific, and honestly, you know, I off the top of my head, I don't think I could think of a specific instance, but I do recall times when we were like, holy smokes, like you should have came to us, because now, you know, after the fact, especially if construction has happened and the authority sees it and finds out, because they won't give you a permit, depending on the size and scope again, they won't give you a permit if it's big enough and complex enough without sealed professional drawings. So if construction has taken place after that and the authority kind of comes in and says, this building, you can't occupy this building, and there's a lot of legal tools in their toolkit where they can prevent you from even stepping foot on the property kind of thing. Then you're looking at, you got to hire a professional to come in, review everything that's been done, and then they'll probably, more than likely, find something wrong, and hopefully it's minor and it doesn't require a bunch of tear out, but then they also have to put their kind of stamp on it, and it's really hard to, you know, there's a lot of liability in this business when it comes to that kind of stuff, and so it's very tricky. And then, you know, God forbid that there is a casualty involved with not having any of this design, then you're looking at other, not only financial and time constraints, but possible jail time then too, right? So it's not, you definitely, you know, depending on the size of the project, you may not need professional involvement. You still need to always abide by the building code, but it never hurts to pick up the phone or send an email and ask the question if you're not sure, right? Do I need professional involvement? And the municipality will let you know as well.
Right. Well, and you're saying too, you're connected with the architects, you're connected with the people that are going to be in the game. So it's like to book a 1 hour meeting, I mean, just to understand, you know, what kind of problems you might run into might be money well spent.
Yeah,
right? I can imagine, you know, and there would be cases like this where people have committed to purchasing a building. Maybe they've already purchased it, or they've, you know, or a lease or something like that, and they might not be able to do their work there, but they will still have to pay for the place.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's probably, in terms of the cost of the whole scheme of things, it's probably money well spent.
Yeah, for sure. So what question did we miss today? In fact, anything real estate, what would you like to know about? You can contact me directly or send me an email or comment on a Facebook post, and then we will explore that and we'll delve in deeper. So for this and other great interviews that can have a great impact on your very next real estate transaction, you can find me online, Mark Street Sold, either Facebook, YouTube, or just Google that. So thanks for watching. Bye.